celebration program for Jerry Clark. And for some of us who are in this room, including myself, the last time we saw Jerry, we saw him here. At the African American Civil War Museum. It was here for one of those various meetings that he went to all of the time to discuss statehood for the District of Columbia. So it's kind of strange to be talking about it here tonight because it's like we just saw it. And I guess it is true that his spirit will always be here. And if his spirit is going to live someplace, it should live at the African American Civil War Museum. So we invite you to come out and see it. I always like to pay a special welcome to my Ward 1 Councilwoman who's here with us tonight, Brianne Joe. Darryl Schwartz, who was on the City Council and the school board with me before the City Council. Grasso told me he was coming tonight also, so when he gets here, you tell him I recognize him from the podium in his house. Is he here already? Oh, the Ward 6 council. Okay. Coming out, and Nita Bunn's on her way. All right. Okay, so welcome all of you all. We're going to hear an awful lot about Jerry tonight, and we're all going to miss this guy. We're going to see his, as one of those songs says, we're going to see his face in these meetings from time to time, and we're going to hear his voice, and he's going to remind us from time to time that we're not doing enough for our freedom. And it is kind of a irony of, I guess, life, that at the time when the mayor announces a big initiative to change D.C., and get some support from a national candidate who's running, is a time when Jerry will make his transition. So maybe he's saying, well, now that I got this thing started, I can go to my base. But it's up to us to finish it. May God continue to bless all of you, and may God continue to bless statehood for the District of Columbia. Thank you.
In a minute, I'll be joined by my co-chair, Tony Johnson. I think he's just coming in. But we will now go to a selection by Roy Hill, My Country City. And by the way, there are lots of programs, so we printed enough so that you can take extras for people you need to take a picture. We're not able to get here this evening.
No.
Roy? Elder Michael Van Zant for our moment of centering.
What is centering? Is it how you arrange your vase on your cocktail table? Or is it where you put your couch in your living room? No, this is a time that we want to have all of us to put aside our anxieties. All of us came into this room with some worries, some concerns, children, husbands, wives, jobs, politics, whatever. But we need to take some time right now just to concentrate, to center on why we're here. Can I have an agreement that is what we will do right now, just to put aside those worries and those anxieties, those concerns, and just center on the life of Jerry and Clark. I need someone to let you know I didn't bias this situation. Anyone who has a clock or watch who will keep time for me and mark off 1 minute when I say start. Anyone, any volunteers, one person, one over there. As I said before, we are to, I often do this when I'm doing invocation at church on Sunday morning to get people away from their concerns and get them centered on why they're at church. There was some concern. There was some concern about Jerry as to whether he can go to church much. But we're not here today, theists, atheists, agnostics, nationalists, or anything. We're not here for that reason today, right? We're here to concentrate and center on Jerry Clark. Start. Close your eyes. One minute. So be it. At this time, we would like to have Sheila Alexander Reed from the Executive Office of the Mayor.
Good evening, everybody. Why don't we all just take a collective inhale and exhale? Ready? First inhale. 1, 2, 3. And exhale. Thank you. One more, just with me, because I'm the one that's nervous, but this is helping me. Thank you. This is the District of Columbia proclamation from Mayor Muriel Bowser in memory of Jerry and Clark. Whereas Jerry Clark lived in Adams Morgan for more than 40 years and was an advocate for the LGBT community in DC statehood, and whereas Jerry Clark received his bachelor's degree from Princeton University, law degree from the University of Chicago, and completed his doctoral studies in political science at the University of Minnesota, and whereas Jerry Clark was a member of the National LGBTQ Task Force, chair of the DC Statehood Coalition, chair and political director for DC for Democracy, board member of the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, co-chair of DC's Whitman Walker Health Spring Gala, trustee for the Law and Society Association, and the Democratic National Committee's Gay and Lesbian Leadership. And whereas Jerry Clark will be remembered for his leadership, compassion, dedication, commitment, and unwavering vision of equality for all. And whereas we gather to reflect on how he touched the lives of those who knew him, may we find strength in the love of family and the warm embrace of friends to ease the pain of the loss we feel. Now therefore I, the Mayor of the District of Columbia, do hereby proclaim May 17, 2016 in Washington, D.C. as a day of remembrance for Mr. Jerry N. Clark. Mayor Muriel Bowser. Okay, I'm back now as Sheila Alexander Reed. I'm at the bottom of the program, but since I'm up here, I'm going to just knock it out. I looked in my email today to see how long I've known Jerry, and I think he's been emailing me about events since 2006, October 2006. And the first email was about the National LGBTQ Task Force. And by April 7th, 2007, I was hosting a fundraiser for the National LGBTQ Task Force in my backyard. So that just gives you a little idea of Jerry's influence and Jerry's commitment to organizing. I like to say that Jerry really loved three things. He loved organizing. He was a consummate organizer. He loved people of color. And when I say that, I mean Jerry always called me so that I could give him some names, so there's always people of color at the table. So it could be men, it could be women, it could be lesbian, gays, bisexual, transgender, it could be for the Civil War Museum, it could be for a Smithsonian exhibit, it could be for anything, but he always, always, always made sure that people of color were at the table. And I always had a special place in my heart for that because, you know, that's not common. I would say the third thing that he loved was DC statehood. As many of you know, when we get statehood, I hope that there's some recognition given to Jerry, because we will get it, by the way. And yes, let's give a round of applause for that. We will get it. And we will have Jerry N. Clark to thank as one of the primary proponents of getting that. So I just want to thank everybody for coming out. The last time I talked to Jerry was at a Stein Club Christmas event, and he was mad at himself because he'd had a stroke. That's how Jerry is. He was mad that he had a stroke because he couldn't work as hard as he wanted to. So that just gives you just a small sort of inkling of how Jerry took his organizing, his life so seriously. And I said, Jerry, you just have to take your time. You'll get back. He's like, I just need to get back to myself right now. There's so much work to do. And so I'm glad that Jerry's finally getting the rest he deserves. Thank you.
At this time, Congresswoman Norton is en route, so we will progress through the program. I would like to call Councilmember Alyssa Silverman. Oh, all at one time? Okay. Councilmember Nadeau and Councilmember Allen.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's truly my honor to be here along with my colleagues. And I came in as Sheila was reading the mayoral resolution, but the council has also honored Jerry with a ceremonial resolution that we passed, I think, earlier this month, and will hopefully be presenting to Jerry's family very shortly. So I thought we could all read the resolution and then perhaps give some of our personal thoughts about Jerry. Okay. Okay, terrific. So this is a ceremonial resolution in the District of Columbia, Council of the District of Columbia, to recognize and honor Jerry N. Clark as a longtime public servant to the District of Columbia who selflessly committed himself to improving the lives of district residents and tirelessly championed bringing full representation to the District of Columbia through statehood. Go ahead. We can pick out various. Yeah.
It'll be clear in a moment while I'm reading the next paragraph. Whereas Jerry moved to Adams Morgan in 1973 after earning a bachelor's degree from Princeton University, a law degree from the University of Chicago, and a doctoral degree in political science from the University of Minnesota.
I'm just going to take a prerogative and go with two of these. All right, whereas Jerry was a fierce advocate for ensuring district residents receive their full democratic rights and founded the D.C. Statehood Coalition in 2012, acting as chair until 2016. Whereas Jerry is one of the most active members of D.C. for Democracy, where he was appointed political director, later served as chair, expanded the organization's commitment to economic justice and good governance, and focused on electoral campaigns, most significantly Senator Barack Obama's historic presidential run, during which he was elected an Obama delegate to the 2008 Democratic National Convention.
And whereas Jerry was an integral board member of the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence and passionately fought to keep the district's gun laws intact and free from congressional interference, he had a tough job there, linking the necessity for full democratic rights to gun violence prevention. And whereas Jerry served on the board of directors for the then National Gay and Lesbian Task Force for 13 years, including 4 terms as co-chair of the board of directors, and provided critical leadership through massive changes in the LGBTQ movement, including anti-violence work, the pursuit of non-discrimination laws, and the work for marriage equality.
Whereas Jerry devoted himself to equality for all and was an active member of the National Democratic Committee's Gay and Lesbian Leadership Council, a member of the Gertrude Stein Democratic Club, and a 2014 recipient of the DC Gay and Lesbian Activists Alliance Distinguished Service Awards. Jerry also served as co-chair of the Whitman Walker Health Spring Gala, served as a trustee for the Law and Society Association, and was appointed in 2013 to the Mayor's Committee on the 50th anniversary of the 1963 March on Washington.
And whereas, there's a lot of whereases. And whereas, under Jerry's leadership, the organizations and individuals with whom he worked increased their commitments to economic justice and good governance, being influenced by Jerry's sophisticated political acumen, relationships with political leaders at the national and local level, and enormous commitments of energy, effort, and time.
And this is my favorite. Whereas Jerry will be remembered as the quintessential example of grassroots activist and citizen advocate, one who is an equal opportunity fundraiser and promoter of justice nationally and in the District of Columbia, with millions of people benefiting from his activism and service. So it is hereby resolved by the Council of the District of Columbia that this resolution be cited as the Jerry N. Clark Recognition Resolution of 2016. I guess I'll just share a few of my remembrances of Jerry. I was thinking, Jerry's had such an influence on my life at so many, and I've had a very evolving life. In that Jerry taught me about the importance of local governance. I was a young reporter, and I remember meeting Jerry at his house to talk about the Ward 1 race. And at that time, I didn't know Jerry's prestigious career, an academic career and career as an activist on LGBT issues across the country. But the passion that Jerry had for our community and about making change in our community had such an impact on me. And it actually got me even more involved in covering local politics, because he was so passionate about the impact that local officials could have on their neighbors and on their community and on making change in our country. And the other thing that really strikes me about Jerry is, he had sort of a royal tone to his voice, right? He would always call me and say, Alyssa. And certainly, as I said, Jerry has had a very prestigious career and is known by activists across the country. Yet what really struck me about Jerry is that he knew that change happened one door at a time. And Jerry had a lot of big ideas and a lot of theories of change, and was very influential in a lot of important big political movements. Yet Jerry knew that when it comes down to it, grassroots activism means that you have to engage people one at a time and knock on their doors one at a time. And some of my favorite memories of being with Jerry, especially in the last year or two, is knocking on doors in Virginia to elect a delegate to the House of Delegates. And of course, Jerry was a beloved supporter of mine, and I owe him so much. But it really struck me that how much Jerry believed in that you can't just be a grassroots thinker. You have to be a grassroots activist. And that means actually doing things and making that change happen yourself, as I said, one person at a time and one door at a time. And I did visit Jerry in the last months of his life, and I really want to thank his family for being so devoted to his care, as well as to DC for Democracy's members who were there at his side. And several times I came, he always wanted to talk about district politics. So he was thinking about how to make change in our community. And he's probably still thinking about it right now. So anyway, thank you so much for giving me the time to share my reminiscences of Jerry.
I think it goes without saying that Ward 1 has lost an incredible leader in Jerry. And he, being my constituent, I had a special place in my heart for Jerry. I was noting earlier today that I actually know his address by heart, which is strange because I don't mail him things, right? But I know it. I mean, the number and everything. And it's because his home was really a center. It was a center for so many movements, really. I pass by it regularly, and I would always think, well, I wonder what Jerry's doing in there right now, because surely it was something revolutionary. When I first started out as a candidate for the Ward 1 council seat, Jerry didn't quite know what to make of me. And yeah, that's okay. You should laugh at that. I got a lot of that in those days. Okay, who is this kid? What is she up to? And it took some time. I proved myself, and then, at some point he realized he had to take me seriously because there's this thing, and now I'm the council member. But I appreciated his skepticism because it came from the right place. It came from the place of, if we're going to have new leadership, let's ensure that those leaders know our history, our past, where we've come from, what the grassroots has been doing, and that's something that I value because it's something I was doing as well. Although he and I had only just begun doing it together. And over time, we grew to respect one another, and he allowed me to learn from him as I pursued statehood and worked to strengthen our Democratic Party. He turned me into a soldier for statehood, essentially, along with his sidekicks, Eleanor and Keish. And in fact, I have, like, at all times, a handful of the statehood buttons in my purse now. Just a few weeks ago, I was over speaking to a second grade class. It was supposed to be a civics lesson. Obviously, I used it to talk about statehood to second graders. Because you have to start young. I mean, these kids. I actually had a kid in the room from Maryland who, she didn't raise her hand when I asked if everybody thought DC should have statehood, and I thought, all right, we got some work to do in this classroom. But in any case, just this morning, I got some thank you notes from the second graders, and they were beautiful. And earlier this evening, I presented them to Jerry's family because although they were addressed to me, I really believe that those of us in the younger generation, and for the moment I'm going to call myself part of the younger generation, are obligated to learn from those who came before us and to honor their legacies through our work. And so it's a responsibility I take very seriously, and I seek to honor Jerry in everything I do in that sense. And I felt like those thank you notes to me were really representative of the fact that he had worked with me so hard to get me in this place as a statehood advocate. And so I think they belong with his family. As we say in Judaism, may his memory be a blessing to us all the days of our lives.
Well, good evening, everybody. Chuck is kind of giving me the signal, so we're going to get the hook in a second. So I will be brief. I got to say, just looking around this room, I hope each of you can just take one quick second and look around, because this is our city in this room, and it's pretty phenomenal to see. These are so many people touched by our friend Jerry, and it's really an honor to be able to come here to help celebrate what he has meant and what he will continue to mean for us moving forward. I'll just share briefly. I got to know Jerry, but I can't remember when I first met Jerry. There's kind of just before Jerry and then after Jerry. But it was during the Dean campaign. And I know I have a microphone, but I will not scream. And the campaign itself was a wonderful thing. And for me, as a young kid getting involved in DC politics, it was a whole lot of fun, as well as meeting some incredible people along the way that helped shape who I am and where I hope I try to serve and have this little moment of time where I get to do what I do right now. But Jerry is somebody who also really pushed me back in 2004 to run to be a delegate to the Democratic Convention in 2004. And we may not actually realize it until now, but I think we can give Jerry credit for actually introducing Alyssa and I. Because Alyssa was that cub reporter at the Post, or at City Paper at the time, and I ran, and there's this, you guys don't know his name is Jack Evans. I beat him to be a delegate, and somehow that was newsworthy. And so I got to meet Alyssa that way. And Jerry helped actually, in my mind, kind of facilitate and make that connection. And along the way, Jerry knew the value of not always having to be the person out front, but he knew the value of how to connect so many people and to give people a cause and to help people just keep pushing. And when you felt a little bit knocked down, like I'll be honest, we're feeling a little bit today when we think about DC and DC statehood and what we all want and deserve. Jerry's the guy who's right behind you, just kind of pushing you back up, put his hand on your shoulder, and push you forward. And I know that as I think about that before Jerry and after Jerry, there will always be Jerry. Jerry is going to be somebody who helps push me and pushes so many people as we continue to move forward and to carry on the vision and the values that he embodied so well and that we all share. So thank you all for coming out tonight so much for our celebration.
Our Congresswoman is here, so we're going to have her come up at this time. Let me also just remind everybody that there are a lot of speakers, and we agree that outside of perhaps the Congresswoman, that we're going to use 2 minutes. And it becomes fair because there's a lot of people who have a lot of things. I could talk about Jerry for an hour and a half easily, but we want to kind of say something, but give everybody a chance. And the room is filling up, and for some of us who are over 50 to stand a long time is painful. So let me introduce the hardest working person in Congress that I know, and she does this without a vote, and she makes amazing things happen for us in this city, from the Anacostia River, the money she got for that, to all kinds of things that she does without a vote. So please welcome our Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes.
Thank you so much, Chuck. Thank you, Chuck and Tony, for calling us together. There are any number of people who would have done it because Jerry had so many friends, because he had so many causes. You know, he couldn't see unequal treatment not go for us. And he went for it all across our city. I must tell you, I think Jerry might have wanted us to be meeting on a day like this. First, I came to our city hall to stand in solidarity with our elected officials over our budget, and to say that this was the only place in the nation's capital that had any right to be talking about our budget. That was literally an hour before I had to go to the Congress to keep them from performing yet another shameful act. I can tell you that Jerry would have been at both places. He'd have been at the Wilson Building, and he would have been at the Congress, and there were some who came to the Congress. You know, I had to remind my colleagues, not yet, this is not about statehood. This is about what you talk about all the time. Local control. You don't like the federal government. You like what local jurisdictions do. Well, so do we. Well, we may have broken all records on statehood in terms of the number of members of the House and Senate who support us. But we weren't asking for much of this time. We were asking that the referendum you passed in 2013 be respected by the Congress of the United States. The reason I think of Jerry on a day like this is because of the consistency of his extraordinary leadership, and particularly on statehood and our rights. You know, we've had ups and downs. When you've been fighting for your rights for more than 2 centuries, you can't expect everybody to be up for it every other day. Somehow Jerry was up for it every other day. I don't know how you managed to do it, but you could not be talking about our rights, but you weren't looking straight in the face of Jerry Clark. So I hope we will take Jerry's consistency as a marker. If you for it when it's up and exciting, and you let it go away, the Congress just laughs. They say they'll grow tired. There are not many Jerry Clarks around here. Well, we're going to show that they're wrong. And one thing I ask you to do is to use this ceremony not just to mourn or even to laugh, because Jerry also made us laugh, but to also try to spread the spirit of Jerry Clark throughout the District of Columbia. I couldn't get over where Jerry was on our rights. He was with the nuts and bolts, and he was with the big picture. So I thought that what I ought to do today was to put Jerry Clark in Congress's face. So I asked the Congress to join me in honoring Jerry Clark. And I named a number of causes, but the first one I named was his consistency on our rights. But you know, this came so naturally to Jerry. Look where he spent his career with United Mine Workers Health Program. And what you're going to hear today is a plethora of speakers on every which way cause in the District of Columbia. I don't know how he had the time to do it. All I know is that he left us far too early. And I can tell you this, when I try to think of ways to understand what we have to do, I won't be thinking of how long the road. I'll be thinking of a man who never thought of how long the road, but somehow managed to be on that road to lead us. Yes, this was an avid citizen leader without office, without portfolio. Let us today honor his memory by taking up his many causes, particularly the cause of the city he loved, the city that he insisted that all of us love just as much as he. Thank you for this tremendous turnout with Jerry Clark this evening. This is for Amy. I'll bring it down. Here, Amy, in remembrance of Jerry.
U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin is unable to join us this evening, but we have Mr. Bill Merritt, her Chief of Staff.
Good afternoon. I have a letter from Senator Baldwin. Dear friends, I regret that I'm unable to join you today as you celebrate the life of Jerry Clark. Jerry was a wonderful man and a dear friend. His passing is a great loss for our community. Saul Alinsky once observed that life is too short not to be full of passion and conviction, and that is how Jerry lived his life. He was a passionate advocate in the fight for DC statehood. He worked tirelessly for LGBT rights, serving for many years on the board of the National LGBTQ Task Force, including as its co-chair. He was also involved in many other issues and campaigns, including the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. All of these activities were in addition to his career as an attorney and health benefits specialist, including many years with the United Mine Workers Health and Retirement Funds. In all that he did, Jerry worked to improve the lives of others and to improve the city in which he lived. I first met Jerry in 1998 when I was a candidate for the House of Representatives from Wisconsin. Despite the odds, Jerry was engaged from the beginning and was always there for me, as I know he was for so many of you. Beyond support, Jerry brought wisdom, energy, and joy to everything that he did. He was a deeply caring person who left the world a better place than he found it. I join you in mourning his passing. He will be greatly missed. Sincerely, Senator Tammy Baldwin.
At this time, I would like to call U.S. Senator Paul Strauss, U.S. Representative Michael Brown, and U.S. Representative Franklin Garcia.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Senator Michael Brown. Despite what the program says, I knew Paul Strauss would figure out a way to get rid of me, but I'm going to let, we put together a resolution for Jerry, and we're going to let Theodore Brown from our office read that to you, and then we'll all make a brief remark. Theodora, please.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. There have been so many wonderful words said about Jerry as well, and I think we all read from the same fact sheet about Jerry. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of important activities that Jerry was engaged in. District of Columbia Statehood Congressional Delegation, U.S. Senator Paul Strauss, U.S. Senator Michael D. Brown, U.S. Representative Franklin Garcia, the ceremonial resolution to recognize and honor the life and contributions of Jerry N. Clark. So I'm going to jump from the first paragraph and talk about Jerry's training as an advocate, because clearly he used those skills for all the activities that he engaged in over the years. And specifically, his efforts on behalf of the statehood movement. During his leadership, he organized lobbying efforts to support DC statehood and worked towards getting co-sponsors for the New Columbia Mission Act, currently it's HR 317 and Senate 1688. Resolved that by the District of Columbia Statehood Delegation, that this resolution recognizes and honors Jerry N. Clark for his exemplary leadership and selfless commitment to public service presented on the 17th day of May 2016 by the members of the Statehood Congressional Delegation. Thank you.
Thanks, Theodora. I'll be brief to give not to take too much time from my colleagues, but we're in a very old movement, and we like to say, I had a friend that used to say, don't judge a man by what he brings to the table, judge him by what he leaves behind. So you should look around, because this is what Jerry's left behind, a legacy of people whose lives he's touched. And I'd just like to say that we often say we stand on the shoulders of those that came before us. So what I'd like to say to Jerry is thanks for lifting us all and giving us a better place to stand.
I noticed in the program it said Office of Senator Strauss, as if somehow I would skip this one personally. Moses wasn't allowed to enter the promised land, and Martin went to the mountaintop but knew that he might not get there with us, but that we as a people will get to the promised land. Jerry, I'm sad that you may not get there with us, at least in the physical sense, but know that we dedicate ourselves in your memory to this movement, and that we as a people will get there with you to the promised land. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Jerry was a very, very important person for all of us. Many of us fought many battles with him, no doubt. And that's why you are here. You're committed to him because he was committed to you. He had a lifelong commitment to service, but not only in the LGBT community, in the African American community, but also he was also very committed to the Latino community of the city. I was very privileged about 2 years ago to honor him for all the contributions and all the work that he did to ensure that we had a seat at the table. So we're very sad to see this incredible partner go, but we take solace in knowing that his work will continue. I mean, Jerry's legacy continue forever, and it is up to us to make sure that it continues. Thank you, Jerry, for all that you did.
At this time, we will have a selection by Mr. Sterling Washington.
It must have been cold there in my shadow to never have sunlight on your face. You've been content to let me shine. You always walked the step behind. I was the one with all the glory, while you were the one with all the strength. Only your face without a name. I never once heard you complain. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything I'd like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. It might have appeared to go unnoticed that I've got it all here in my heart. I want you to know I know the truth. I would be nothing without you. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything I'd like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. You are the wind beneath my wings.
Yes. Round of applause. Sterling was worried about whether or not he could do this. I think he'd be all right. Can we now have the following people to come up from organizations? Earl Folks and Kurt Von from Gertrude Stein, the Coalition Against Gun Violence, DC for Democracy, for Martin Luther King Parade, Yango Sawyer, Whitman Walker, the representative, Gay and Lesbian Task Force, Julia Childs, and DC Statehood Coalition, Eleanor Hart.
Thank you, Chuck. Jerry was a tremendous advisor, I think, to all of the presidents of the Stein Democratic Club, except on those few times when maybe he was on the other side of a candidate we had endorsed, when my reaction would be, cripes, they got someone on their team that knows what they're doing. But Jerry and I both lived on Calvert Street, and we would regularly bump into each other on the street. Jerry always going to some meeting, and in my defense, me sometimes doing the same thing, other times on my way to cocktails and supper at Mama Yeshi's. But there was something notable with all of the meetings Jerry went to and all the organizations and all the great causes that we've heard about this evening and we'll hear more about. And that's that Jerry was rarely the head of any of these groups unless he was really forced to be. Jerry always found talent and pushed others to the forefront, and by doing so created the many great leaders of great organizations that we have present here today. And that's his legacy, all the leaders and the activists that he's nurtured, and for that, we're very grateful.
Good evening. I've known Jerry 20 years, and I'm actually just coming back from Delaware. I was visiting with my father, who turned 80 years old, and I was having lunch. I said, I have to hurry back to D.C. He goes, why? I said, because I have to go to a memorial service. For who? I said, well, you don't know the guy, but he's really... And he said, well, what did he do? Why are you rushing back? I said, well, I explained some of the things, and he fought for statehood. He goes, statehood for D.C. He said, he must be a really good man. And if my father, who's a really good man, says another man is a good man, they're good men. I know two things about Jerry. First of all, in the 20 years I've known him, every time he called me, it cost me money. I'm not always sure what the causes he was standing for, but I knew if he called that it was important and that I should support him. The second thing is that Jerry was one of those few people I've met in my life who were true. I thought he was an architect because he was always bridge building. Because he was one of those people who could bring all parts of our various diverse District of Columbia together. East of the river, west of the river, Black, Latino, Asian Pacific Islander, Jewish, Christian, Latino, he could bring them together. Jerry was a Pied Piper for humanity. And I think the best way we can continue his legacy is, first of all, continue to fight for statehood. Secondly, is to be a bridge builder, because there are many, as our community changes and grows, and some parts are prosperous and some are not, we need people like Jerry Clark to build the bridges to remind us that we're all connected together, and we all have a stake in how DC looks, and we all have a stake in us becoming a state. So I hope that we can continue to be Jerry Clarks in our own way. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ladd Everett, the Director of Communications of the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. I'll read our proclamation for Jerry. It says, in memory of Jerry Clark and his contributions to the gun violence prevention movement, for many years, Jerry Clark served as a board member for the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence and was a dear friend to our organization. As we fought to keep the District of Columbia's gun laws intact and free from congressional interference, Jerry played a key role in keeping us connected with a broad and diverse group of stakeholders in the city. Every elected official and community leader in the area seemed to know Jerry, and even if they differed with him politically, respect him. Jerry was a fierce advocate for democratic rights and gun violence prevention. For him, the connection between these two important issues was self-evident and unbreakable. We miss Jerry dearly and will always think of him as the quintessential example of a true citizen advocate. I'm really humbled and really honored to have a chance to speak about Jerry tonight. Like so many of you, I can't remember exactly when I met him. I moved to DC in 1993, and I know it was several years before we did meet, but it kind of feels like I've always known him. And moving forward, the city will feel just strange without him. He was always a presence, like so many have said, whenever you needed anything, whenever an important issue was on the table. He was such an important voice. And his style of leadership is also something I'll remember. Jerry was not a guy that yelled. He was not a guy that had to bully you into doing something. There was a quiet dignity about him. He always led by example. He led because he was always the guy out in front, putting his time behind an important issue, his energy. And like many of you, I wonder when the man slept. I'm learning more about him even tonight and all the causes he worked on. Mr. Hicks called me at 10 p.m. the other night and was apologizing, but he said, you know what, Jerry and I always used to talk at midnight or 1 a.m., at the end of the day, just to wrap up and discuss things. And you know what, maybe the man simply didn't sleep. But I have so much admiration for him. I believe so much in this wonderful experiment we call democracy, and Jerry just cherished it and believed so strongly. And whenever I think in the future of what it truly means to be a citizen and truly work to improve this great nation, I will always think of him. And again, I'm just thankful I had an opportunity to share a few thoughts about him. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to speak on behalf of DC for Democracy members, many of whom I see out here tonight. Jerry personified in so many ways the spirit of our organization. Jerry was part of DC for D from its earliest days when we began as DC for Dean, the local group supporting Governor Howard Dean in the 2004 presidential primary. My friendship with Jerry began in 2006 when I was phoning DC for D members asking them to volunteer for Judy Fader's campaign against Republican Frank Wolf in Virginia's 10th district. I remember being struck by his voice. You all know that voice. Gracious, well-inflected, and beautiful. He agreed to join our phone bank, and that's how I met him. From then on, he became one of DC for Democracy's most active members, serving as our political director from 2008 on and our chair from 2010 to 2013. Jerry can claim an outsized share of the credit for all the work we've done in the last 10 years, from campaigning for Obama in the primary in 2008 to serving as an Obama delegate in the 2008 convention and coming up to in 2014 when he campaigned very hard for Alyssa Silverman and Charles Allen, and last year for Jennifer Boysker in Virginia. He was also the moderator of choice for our candidate forums, several of which were recorded and allow us to remember Jerry at the height of his powers. Jerry personified the independent spirit and committed volunteerism of DC for Democracy. He was able to span the full spectrum from high strategy to the grunt work of campaigning. He was a man of principle who stood firmly, though always civilly, for what he believed in. Jerry, wherever you are, we are so blessed that you made DC for Democracy your political home these last 10 years and warmed us with your friendship. We will honor your memory by continuing the work to which you devoted your remarkable life.
If Yango Sorgi is here, will he come up? And if Councilmember Anita Barnes, is she here?
I have a statement for her.
Okay, well, if you all will come up, and now our next presenter.
Good evening. My name is Amy Nelson. I am the Director of Legal Services at Whitman Walker Health. On behalf of Whitman Walker Health and our Board of Directors, our leadership staff, our clients and volunteers, I am honored to be here tonight to celebrate the life of Jerry Clark. Jerry was, of course, a pillar of Washington's gay community, a leader and an activist in our collective fight for equal rights. His intellect and passion contributed to countless victories, challenging losses, and an ever-growing community of love and compassion. Whitman Walker is very proud to have been part of this community since 1978, and more importantly, a part of Jerry's life since 1988. For the past 28 years, Jerry's gifts to the Whitman Walker family have saved lives and comforted survivors. The AIDS crisis touched so many individuals and their lives here in the district and ultimately generated a profound community response. Jerry was an integral part of that response through his volunteer support of Whitman Walker's Legal Services Program, our Lesbian Services Program, our many fundraising events, including co-chairing our gala in 2004, and of course, working with the annual AIDS Walk. As is the essence of community, Jerry was always